not yet published, is that in Japan, for 100 years, they have calorimeters mounted on the surface of the Earth. The sun comes down through the clouds or whatever's in the way, and the calorimeters measure how much sunlight is actually hitting the Earth's surface all over Japan. They have a 100-year record of that. It's shown in red there. And the blue is the surface temperature. There appears to be a correlation between the two, but as you noticed, in this slide, correlation does not always imply causation. As you will see, at the moment, we have an appalling deficiency in sunspots and not enough Republican senators in Congress. Thought you'd like that. So when I lie, I do make it obvious to you. So now then we have another possibility that you need to understand. The fact of warming, which of course stopped in 1995 and hasn't really resumed since, but the fact of warming does not tell us its cause. Every time you hear the environmentalists say, oh, it's been melting in Greenland, therefore humankind is responsible for global warming. That is the Aristotelian fallacy known as the argumentum ad ignorantiam. We don't know what's causing the warming, so we're going to blame it on anything we like. That is not a rational or logical argument. And it might just as well be Al Gore with his flamethrower on the surface of Greenland. So then we have CO2. This is what it's all about, isn't it? CO2. CO2 now occupies, get this, 1/10,000th more of the atmosphere than it did in 1750. That is all, 1/10,000th. And if we try really hard and don't cut down our CO2 emissions, we might be able to occupy another 1/2000th part of the atmosphere in the whole of the next 100 years. That is all. And here you can see the actual record of CO2 concentration in the atmosphere taken by NOAA. I think they got it right this time. And you'll see the IPCC zone in blue there, and the inset projects it out to 100 years. And you'll see that the little thin pale blue line is well below the IPCC's exponential curve because it's only rising at a linear rate at the moment. That one measurement, that one circumstance, requires all of the IPCC's temperature forecasts to be divided by 2 because there just isn't going to be that much CO2 in the atmosphere, even if we don't make any reduction. And now the sea is cooling. Now this is a serious blow to the official theory because it is agreed among all parties that the sea should be warming. It should be getting hotter. It should be accumulating heat energy. But it isn't. We now have 3,319 Argo bathythermograph buoys deployed throughout the world's oceans. These are very expensive bits of kit. They cost many tens of thousands of dollars each. We have to renew 800 of them every year because they get hit by ships, swallowed by whales, bumped into by Greenpeace vessels. And they have to be replaced. And these go down to depths of a mile and come back up, and they report the temperature and salinity at all depths. And they fire off a signal to the satellite, and back they down they go and do it again. They're carried around the world on the ocean currents, and the university that runs this keeps a map of where they all are. It's the most reliable and most expensive method of temperature measurement we've ever done. And throughout the period of measurement, which is 6 years, the oceans have been cooling. The heat energy is not accumulating there. And as a result, sea level over the last 4 years, that little red arrow at the top there, is hardly increasing at all. It was increasing at a dizzying rate of 1 foot per century. Now, not at all. Not what you see reported in the newspapers. And recently, a very important paper by Douglas and Knox, 2 very distinguished professors. I've had the pleasure to lead a seminar on climate sensitivity at their university. They've just produced a very fascinating paper in which they've gone back and looked at all the levels, all the heat energy figures for the oceans of the world, going back 68 years. And they find in that time no net accumulation of heat energy in the oceans whatsoever. And what that means is that if you put double the CO2 in the atmosphere, it is barely going to make any difference to global temperature. The NOAA, of course, disagrees. But how does it get away with disagreeing? First of all, it leaves out all the Argo data. Well, it's not convenient. It goes the wrong way. They leave out all the satellite data, which does the same. And they rely only on the data from ships dropping canvas buckets down as they randomly pass across the oceans and pulling up some water and sticking a thermometer in. And only then can they make out that ocean heat is accumulating. That's how they do it. They bend the data. They don't use the latest techniques because the latest techniques are producing answers they find uncongenial. So then we have a little experiment for you to do. I want you to squint at this screen now through your lashes. Which bits can you see? The white bits. Those are the clouds. They reflect light back into space. If the planet were to warm, you'd get more clouds and more light reflected back into space, wouldn't you? Yes, you would. So the UN says the opposite would happen, that the Earth would heat up because you'd get more radiation coming down in there. And there is no scientific basis for that conclusion at all, that, as it's called, the cloud albedo feedback is positive. It is, in fact, very strongly negative, as a paper just about to come out by Roy Spencer at the University of Alabama at Huntsville will testify. And here is why. There is the fundamental equation of radiative transfer. This is the only equation you can use if you want to convert changes in the amount of radiant energy in the atmosphere, trapped down here, as we're told, by CO2, into changes in temperature. Any mathematicians present? Not even one. Good, I can get away with everything then. Right. Now, what happens here is if you look at that equation, the radiative flux, F on the left, is balanced on the other side by temperature raised to the fourth power. What that means is you have to have a very large change in radiative flux to get a very small change in temperature, which is no doubt why the UN's climate panel, in the 1,600 pages of its 2007 report and in the 1,000 pages of its 2001 report, does not once mention that fundamental equation. It's the only equation that can do for them the job of answering the question we need the answer to, and they do not mention it once, because they know what it shows. Any mathematician looking at that can immediately see we don't have a problem with the climate. If we apply that equation to this question of whether the clouds building up would make the Earth warmer or cooler, we get an extremely clear answer.